Hello, welcome. My name is Lawrence James. This is episode 4 of The Language of Abuse, the series where we hope to instill some clarity around some of the most commonly used and misused words in the modern mental health space. On the last session, we spoke about love bombing. That's this super intense, sudden, and extreme bombardment of love and affection and attention and time spent with the goal of disarming you, of confusing you and knocking you off balance. And what this does is this launches you into a new normal, a new level of attention and affection received that is very, very hard to come back down from. Kind of like creating a social media account and then after 3 years you post something that goes viral. Woo, I went viral! And then the next day there's nothing. Well, it's very, very weird to come back down to a level of what felt normal before now feels dead, feels cold, feels lifeless. And this is what it feels like to develop a trauma bond. So that's what we're going to go through on this video today. We're going to talk about what it is, how it happens, and I'm going to give you a bunch of signs to look out for as well. So let's start with what trauma bonding is not. And the amount of times I've seen these dumb Instagram posts.
They're trauma bonded because they fell in love with a toxic person and they can't leave them. And it's just like, I have this chaotic toxic trait.
All these dudes falling in love with baddies and these girls that are just like falling in love with these douchebags that treat them wrong. And it's like, I fell in love with a toxic person and now I'm trauma bonded and blah, 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 blah. Trauma bonding is not loving a toxic person. In reality, it's an addiction to another person. Now, in my opinion, the best way to describe trauma bond is kind of like coffee. It's strong, it's intense, and it's addictive. If you were to have 2 or 3 of these, probably wouldn't be too much of an issue. You know, one espresso here or there. You're not displacing your caffeine tolerance by too much, right? But if you went from having no coffee in your life to having 10 espressos a day, what do you think that would do to your heart? If your heart doesn't give out and your kidneys don't explode, then your body is going to force itself to become adjusted to taking in 10 espressos a day. Your blood's going to have to get used to that sheer amount of caffeine on a daily basis. And it will. And you will form an addiction. And when you then stop drinking coffee, what's going to happen? You're going to get the jitters. You're going to start shaking. You're going to start telling yourself that you need the coffee in order to stay alive and well. And this is what is happening when you develop a trauma bond with another person, except you're not addicted to caffeine, you're addicted to another person. A trauma bond is an addiction to another person. And that's a pretty wild thing to say, but if you've been in this position, you probably know exactly what I mean. And this happens in much the same way that you would form an addiction to that espresso. You have cycles of abuse that strengthen the bond that forms. So when you get into a toxic relationship, you form an attachment first and foremost, right? There's a bond to that other person, and this is kind of like that feeling that you get when you try to throw away an old shirt or old clothes that don't fit you anymore, but you can't quite bring yourself to do it because of all of that sentimental value that's attached to that object. So even though the shirt doesn't fit anymore, it's got holes in it, it's broken, you keep hold of it because it's just too painful to throw away. So this is the attachment you form at the beginning of a toxic relationship with that other person, which makes you cling to them. You don't want to let them go, and so you're more likely to try and bend and morph yourself into what they need in order to keep them than you are to let someone go if they're not quite right for you. And so that's formed at the very, very beginning, and then through cycles of abuse, this will strengthen this bond the same way that when you go to the gym, you break down the muscle through tension and relaxation, and then you go and relax in the sauna and eat a buttload of chicken the next day, and that then builds the muscle up. And through this cycle of breaking down and then eating a whole ton of protein to build the muscle back up, we do the same thing with the bond here in the toxic relationship, except it's not done through going to the gym. It's done through cycles of treating you amazingly and then treating you awfully the next minute. So all of that, what's called devaluation, treating somebody like they're the shit on the bottom of their shoe, is going to break down your sense of self-worth. It's going to make you feel awfully about yourself. And then the next minute, you're wonderful again and you're being treated amazingly. And what this will do is it kind of looks a little bit like this, where you have this cycle of abuse, or this cycle of addiction that's getting you hooked onto that person, and strengthening this feeling of need that you have on them. This, I need to keep them. I need to keep this shirt. I need the coffee in order to stop feeling that sense of jitteriness and those shakes and those sweats, and you go pale when you don't have the espresso, right? Remember, we've gone from having no coffee to 10 espressos a day. So let's say we're fully caffeinated and then we stop having those espressos. We're going to start to feel this withdrawal. These thoughts are going to start creeping in. I don't have the espresso. I feel awful. I have no energy. I'm shaking. All I can think about is espresso. And essentially, this is exactly what it is when you are dependent on the substance to stay alive. You go back and watch episode 2. Dependency is something that you need, and something that you need is something that you cannot live without. So these thoughts are creeping in now. I need espresso. I need caffeine. I need this person, because if I don't get that, then I'm going to die. These are the thoughts that start to creep into our head during the sort of withdrawal phase. And what then happens is you relapse, you end up having it, you end up going to the person, or you end up having the espresso. And then you go, okay, well, I have it now. Now I feel better. And this reaffirms this false belief that you need that substance in order to survive. It has saved you, hasn't it? So imagine you go from having no espressos to having 10 espressos a day. This pushes you into this new normal, this new high. You've had a taste of that new high, this new world that of hyper caffeinatedness. And then when you come back down from that, the rest of the world now feels deadened in comparison. And you enter into this big cycle of, I don't have it, I feel awful, and I need it to survive, to then having it, feeling better, and reaffirming the false belief that, yes, you do need it to survive. See, I got it, and I survived. And this keeps you in what Robert J. Lifton called the demand for purity, this constant state of striving. Through these cycles of abuse, your self-esteem is being worn down. You're then having to work very, very hard in order to get back into the good graces of the person who is wearing you down. And when you finally start on the up curve again, and they finally start to treat you better, it reaffirms the false idea that that works. Okay? That you can manage their moods, that you can anticipate what they need. So you end up in one of these two modes of thinking. Either you're calming them down, or you're trying to stop them from freaking out. It's very, very common for people in toxic relationships to attach their sense of self, or attach their sense of salvation. That's their need to be saved, or their need to feel safe. Like, okay, I need this person, and if I don't get them, I will die, And when they have a meltdown and start blaming you for things, the first reaction that you have as the, I don't like the word, but victim in this scenario, is that they're going to leave. They're going to go away, and I'm going to be left alone. My sense of salvation is gone. I won't be safe. My sense of purpose is gone. I won't be my own person. I'll be completely worthless. I'll be completely purposeless, and it will feel like I have died. So what do? You go through the exact same feelings that you go through with withdrawal. You desperately try to get the substance. And in this case, it's not caffeine, it's their affection. So you try to win their love and their affection back. They were treating you well and amazingly one point, and you got this sense that you have it. You feel good, and you need their love and affection in order to feel safe, in order to feel whole. And now all of a sudden, they are having a meltdown. They're blaming you for everything, and it feels like they're going to leave, which feels like you're going to die. Get it? And it's through these cycles of abuse, of getting their love and affection and feel better, to not having their love and affection and doing absolutely anything to get it, that you strengthen that bond. It gets worse and worse and worse. It gets stronger and stronger, this sense of needing them in order to feel safe and in order to feel whole. So let's go through some of the signs of what this might look like on the outside, and maybe you've experienced some of these things as well. So first of all, justifying or defending your abusive partner or your abusive boss or family members' treatment of you. Okay, their bad behavior. And we're not just talking, them just being a bit mean to you or anything like that. If you want to really understand what I mean by abusive behavior here, you could just watch through the rest of the series. We're going to define a lot of the techniques and tactics that coercive controllers, narcissists, psychopaths use on their closest, most intimate relationship partners or their family, right? We're talking about justifying and defending that. Okay, the sorts of things which wear you down at a spiritual, psychological, emotional, and potentially even physical level. If you're justifying or defending this to the outside world and to other people in your life, that is a possible sign that you are unhealthily bonded to them. The same goes for trying to cover for them as well. They're going to try and get away with something, and you go out into the outside world and you lie on their behalf. This is the same sort of thing where, let's say your partner had broken into a jewelry store and stolen a whole bunch of, jewels and watches and that sort of thing, and they've asked you to lie to the police for them, and you go ahead and diligently you do so. That is what I'm talking about here. Maybe they did break into a jewelry store. Or maybe they just can't manage their own emotions and they're making you personally responsible for doing that, blaming you for everything and having you wear yourself down physically, emotionally, and psychospiritually until you're nothing but a grounded up husk on the floor, and convincing you that you need to tell everybody that everything's actually okay so they never go back to them and blame them for the abuse. This might also lead to you then wanting to help them through their inner demons, and they're helping them through all of the things that they're a problem and becoming their therapist, right? And I call this like a savior complex, which is very, very common within codependents and people that get brought into these toxic relationships. They're suffering at the hands of their partner or the hands of their boss, and maybe you've been there and you know exactly what I'm talking about. But there's a sense of duty and honor that we cling to when we're in these scenarios that make us feel, again, that sense of purpose and that sense of being needed and wanted, because you're there, you're the knight in shining armor, ready to fall on your sword or take a bullet for them. And of course, you're there, their rock, their cornerstone to help them through their problems and protect maybe anybody else in the situation as well, but mostly you're there to help them. Okay, this is another key sign. Then, of course, you blame yourself for the abuse as well. When you're in a trauma-bonded situation, you might, it might be like, oh, well, if I hadn't bought them the wrong chocolate bar, then maybe they wouldn't have reacted that way, and I wouldn't have ended up sleeping on the sofa, and then I wouldn't have ended up being beaten, and it's my fault because I bought the wrong chocolate. That's the sort of thing we're talking about here. People in these situations also end up isolating themselves to try and avoid conflict. Okay, remember that we're in this sort of binary mindset where you're either trying to calm them down or you're trying to stop them from freaking out. And as part of the don't set them off mindset, you might are trying to avoid the conflict or to try and avoid the disapproval of others, to try and keep things all hunky-dory on the outside. You project this mask that everything's going to be okay. And lastly, this all sort of really does lend its way to a state of codependency. From episode 2, you might remember that the victim in this scenario needs to be needed. Your sense of safety, your sense of purpose are attached to this individual when you become addicted to them. That is what this trauma bond is. It's an addiction to another person. You need them. They need you for their needs to help manage their emotional. In the case of a narcissist, they need you because they cannot manage their emotions. So they need you to do that for them. And you need them to feel needed. They're your salvation. They are your sense of purpose. Without them, you have no purpose. You're not safe. So what is trauma bonding? Well, it's not just loving a toxic person, is it? It's an addiction to another person. And the sooner we start treating it that way, then the sooner we can start to recover from toxic abuse. And that is exactly why I set up this channel as well. So if this content is resonating with you, do go ahead and click the subscribe button if you haven't already. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, please do go ahead, drop them in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them there. Now, if you're ready to move on to the next word, we're going to take a look at modern mental health's new favorite buzzword. Click the button up here to dive into gaslighting, and I will see you in just a few moments.